The silence in Washington, D.C. right now isn't the quiet of a sleepy Sunday morning. It's the eerie, pressurized silence that happens just seconds before a controlled demolition. 10 seconds. That's all it took for a single signature in the Oval Office to effectively end a century of political tradition. We aren't talking about a new law or a standard budget cut. We are talking about the Federal Liquidation Executive Order, a move so radical, so massive in its scope, that it has sent the entire D.C. establishment into a state of absolute, unmitigated panic. The swamp isn't just being drained, it's being paved over, and the people who have run this city for 40 years just realized they no longer have a key to the building. This is the moment the American government stopped being a physical place and started becoming a digital experiment, and the escalation we are seeing right now is just the first wave of a total national overhaul. To understand the sheer magnitude of what just happened, you have to look past the cable news headlines and into the fine print of what is being called the Great Relocation. In a move that caught even the most seasoned political analysts off guard, the president has ordered the immediate physical decentralization of the federal government. By the end of 2026, the Department of Education will no longer be in a massive concrete block in D.C. It will be scattered across 5 freedom cities in the Midwest. The Department of Agriculture is being moved to America's heartland, and the FBI's administrative headquarters is being packed into crates and shipped to West Virginia. This isn't just a change of address. This is a deliberate surgical strike designed to sever the social and political tether between the federal bureaucracy and the lobbyists of K Street. For the first time since the Civil War, the seat of American power is being physically dismantled and reassembled across the continent, and the shockwaves are crashing through the D.C. real estate market like a Category 5 hurricane. But the where isn't nearly as shocking as the who, or rather the what. Part of this executive order includes the mandatory implementation of the efficiency layer, a suite of high-level AI protocols designed to replace what the administration calls middle management redundancy. We are talking about the systematic replacement of tens of thousands of GS-13 and GS-14 federal positions with automated auditing systems. In the simple terms of the administration's new Government Efficiency Task Force, if a job involves pushing paper from one desk to another, that job no longer belongs to a human being. Washington is waking up to the reality that the deep state isn't just being challenged, it's being automated out of existence. The escalation is happening in real time as federal unions file emergency injunctions and the Supreme Court prepares for a summer of historic litigation. But on the ground, the moving trucks are already lined up on Pennsylvania Avenue. Why does this matter on a global scale? Because the world has spent the last 80 years relying on the predictability of the American bureaucracy. International treaties, trade agreements, and military alliances are held together by the thousands of career civil servants who stay in their jobs while presidents come and go. They are the institutional memory of the global order. By liquidating this class of workers and replacing the physical infrastructure of government with decentralized AI nodes, the United States is essentially telling the rest of the world that the old rules no longer apply. For allies like the UK and France, this is terrifying. They don't know who to call anymore. There is no permanent secretary to talk to because that position might have been replaced by a logic gate in a server farm in Nevada. This move signals the end of the post-war era and the beginning of the algorithmic state. If the U.S. government becomes a lean, decentralized, and automated machine, it changes the way global capital flows. The Washington consensus is being replaced by a digital consensus. Investors are watching the U.S. dollar with renewed intensity, wondering if a government without a physical heart can still maintain the world's reserve currency. If the federal government successfully cuts its overhead by 30% through this liquidation, the U.S. could theoretically pay down its debt at a rate never before seen in human history. That would make the dollar stronger than ever, but at the cost of the social stability that D.C. has provided for nearly a century. We are watching a superpower trade its institutional weight for algorithmic speed, and the global markets are currently in a state of high-altitude turbulence trying to price in that risk. The visual here should be a time-lapse of the DC skyline fading while lights flicker on in rural areas of the American map, symbolizing the shift in power. As we speculate on what happens next, we have to look at the 2026 midterm collision. This executive order has set up a constitutional showdown that makes the 2000 election look like a school board meeting. The relocated agencies are now moving into states that are politically favorable to the administration, effectively creating federal strongholds in the heart of the country. This creates a fascinating and potentially dangerous new map of political influence. Imagine the Department of Energy being the largest employer in a small town in Ohio. The political loyalty of that entire region would shift overnight. We are looking at a future where the federal government isn't a distant entity in a marble city, but a neighbor in a suburban office park. Furthermore, we are likely to see the great civil service exodus. Thousands of the country's most experienced policy experts, unwilling to move their families to rural Iowa or West Virginia, are quitting the government and moving into the private sector. This brain drain will create a massive power vacuum in D.C., one that the administration is eager to fill with technocratic loyalists and AI-driven oversight. The speculation isn't about whether this will happen, it's already happening. The real question is, can a government actually function when its institutional memory is deleted in a single fiscal year? If the AI systems fail, or if the freedom cities become bogged down in local logistics, we could see a total service brownout where passports aren't issued, taxes aren't processed, and federal grants simply vanish into the ether. But if it works, we are looking at the birth of a hyper-efficient superpower that can pivot its entire national policy in a matter of weeks rather than decades. The escalation is also hitting the legal system with unprecedented force. We are seeing the weaponization of the Administrative Procedure Act. Every single agency move is being challenged in court. This has created a legal gridlock that the administration is bypassing by using emergency powers linked to national economic security. They are arguing that the federal debt is such an existential threat that business as usual in D.C. is a form of national suicide. This is a bold, high-wire act of executive power that hasn't been seen since the FDR era. The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a knife. You have the old guard of Washington, the lawyers, the lobbyists, and the legacy media fighting for their very survival against a new guard that views them as expensive relics of a failed century. But let's go deeper into the digital gold standard rumor that is currently circulating in the high-stakes corridors of the Treasury. There is growing evidence that this liquidation of federal property in D.C., the literal sale of government-owned buildings, is being used to seed a new national Bitcoin reserve. This would be the ultimate shock to Washington. Imagine the government selling off the Department of Labor building to a private developer and using the proceeds to buy 50,000 Bitcoin. This would effectively decouple the American economy from the traditional central banking system. It is a burn-the-ship strategy. If you sell the buildings and fire the staff, there is no going back. You have committed the nation to a new decentralized path where the central authority is no longer a group of people in a room, but a set of immutable protocols. This is why the establishment is so terrified. In the past, you could always negotiate with a president. You could lobby a senator, you could slow-walk a regulation through the bureaucracy, but you cannot lobby an algorithm. You cannot wait out a government that has physically vacated the city. The latest move isn't just about efficiency, it's about eliminating the surface area of influence. By moving the agencies and automating the processes, the administration is making it impossible for the old power centers to gain traction. It is a digital scorched earth policy. As we reach the middle of 2026, the Freedom Cities are beginning to take shape. They aren't just office parks. They are being designed as model communities with integrated AI infrastructure, high-speed rail links, and charter-only school systems. The administration is essentially trying to build a new America within the shell of the old one. This has created a two-tiered society within the federal workforce. You have the remotes, those who were fired or refused to move, and the pioneers, those who moved to the Freedom Cities and are now part of the new, lean, tech-driven government. The cultural divide between these two groups is becoming a primary driver of American politics. Visual of a high-speed Federal Express train connecting D.C. to a futuristic-looking hub in the Midwest. And what about the city of Washington, D.C. itself? The capital of the free world is turning into a museum city. As the federal agencies leave, the city is left with massive empty monuments and a collapsing tax base. The luxury condos that once housed high-paid lobbyists are being sold at 40 cents on the dollar. The famous restaurants where deals were made are closing their doors. D.C. is becoming a ghost town of the 20th century, a hollowed-out monument to a centralized power structure that the rest of the country has decided to abandon. This urban decay at the heart of the empire is the most visible sign of the shock that has hit the system. It is a haunting image, the Capitol dome, still gleaming, surrounded by a city that is no longer the engine of the nation, but its rearview mirror. As we look toward the dramatic conclusion of this current escalation, we have to recognize that there is no return to normal. The bridges have been burned, the data has been migrated, the buildings are on the auction block. The United States is currently in the middle of a hard reboot. It is a risky, chaotic, and often painful process, but it is being driven by a singular, unwavering belief that the 20th century model of government is too slow, too expensive, and too corrupt to survive the 21st century. The shock that hit Washington isn't a temporary event, it is a permanent shift in the tectonic plates of power. The escalation we are seeing isn't just a political battle, it is the final divorce between the American people and the administrative state that has governed them for nearly 100 years. Whether this leads to a renaissance of efficiency or a collapse of coordination is the $30 trillion question. But as the moving trucks leave DC and the efficiency layer goes online, one thing is undeniably clear: the Washington we knew is gone. It hasn't been defeated in a war or destroyed by a natural disaster. It has been liquidated, it has been optimized, and it has been relocated. The world is watching the lights go out in the halls of power, waiting to see if the new lights in the freedom cities will shine as bright, or if we are entering a new dark age of decentralized chaos. The signature on that executive order didn't just move some offices, it shifted the gravity of the entire Western world. 10 seconds to end an era. 10 seconds to start a revolution. The northern front of the tech war was the warning shot. This federal liquidation is the main event. As we move into the final months of this transformative year, the phrase Washington, D.C. is starting to feel like a historical term, like Constantinople or Rome. It is a place where things used to happen. The real action is now in the cloud, in the freedom cities, and in the algorithms that are now deciding the fate of the nation. The shock is over. The escalation is the new reality, and the end of the old world is just the beginning of a future we are not yet prepared to understand. The visual fades to a black screen with the text, "The Capitol has moved." Have you? To push this script toward its 3,500-word depth, we have to explore the economic ripple effect on the surrounding states of Maryland and Virginia. These two states have built their entire economies on the federal tit. Their schools, their infrastructure, and their housing markets are all predicated on the idea that the federal government is a permanent and growing neighbor. With the liquidation order, these states are facing a fiscal black hole. We are talking about a potential default on state bonds and a mass exodus of high-income taxpayers. This is the second wave of the shock. The local governments in the D.C. area are pleading with Congress to stop the liquidation, but with the administration's emergency powers and a populist mandate behind them, those pleas are falling on deaf ears. We must also consider the technological fragility of this new model. The efficiency layer is essentially a massive operating system for the country. What happens if it's hacked? What happens if there's a logic error in the tax processing algorithm that deletes 10 million returns? In the old system, you had a human bureaucrat you could yell at. You had a paper trail. In the algorithmic state, the trail is encrypted, and the bureaucrat is a line of code. This fragility is the silent partner in the tech war. As we become more efficient, we become more brittle. One glitch could theoretically suspend the American government for days or weeks. This is the speculation that keeps the Joint Chiefs of Staff awake at night. They are worried about digital sabotage from foreign adversaries who don't need to fire a missile if they can just crash the government's OS. This brings us to the dramatic ending of our narrative. The latest move by Trump hasn't just shocked Washington, it has dissolved it. The city of D.C. is now a digital relic, a beautiful, empty shell of a time when power was something you could walk to. The escalation is no longer about winning an argument, it's about installing a new reality. The American government has migrated to the cloud, and in doing so, it has left behind the physical constraints of the old world. For over 200 years, the stability of the world was built on the solidarity of those marble buildings in Washington. But in 2026, we are learning that solidarity is a concept from the analog age. In the digital age, power is fluid, power is decentralized, power is automated. The shock was the realization that the buildings weren't necessary. The escalation is the process of proving it. As we close this chapter, look at the map of America once more. The red dots of the freedom cities are glowing. The blue hub of DC is fading. This is the new North American map. This is the new global reality. And as the last moving truck pulls away from the Department of Justice, we have to ask ourselves, if the government is everywhere, is it actually anywhere? Or have we just traded a swamp? we could see for a matrix we can never leave. The latest move is complete. The escalation is total. And the future is now running on a server farm in the middle of a cornfield, governed by an algorithm that never sleeps, never eats, and never ever forgets. Washington is dead. Long live the automated republic.